Hello, good evening, and welcome back. Following on from yesterday's story, the world's wealthiest people are the elite polluters. Apparently, the richest 1% produce double the combined carbon emissions of the poorest 50%, most recent report reveals from the Cambridge Sustainability Commission. So, anything like this, I know they like to pick out Leonardo DiCaprio as a fine example of somebody who jets about on their private jet in order to explain how you shouldn't be doing exactly what they're doing. Or Greta Thunberg, of course, who went, oh yeah, I'm going to go across the Atlantic in a boat in order to prove that, it's okay and you don't need to use a jet or an aircraft. And then, of course, what happened to her team and the boat? Aircraft. Turns out it's actually quite useful. And if it's a single-use boat, then it's created and used just for that one journey and not again, well, then it's less efficient or it's more pollutive than actually using a aircraft for travel. So this whole thing like this just falls down straight away. But the key thing here is, of course, hypocrisy. And it is lovely, of course, to point out somebody's hypocrisy and say, well, yeah, but if you're not doing it, then why should I? And it's also lovely, similarly, when there is a critic to say, well, hey, if you can't do it better than me, then why should I listen to you? And it feels lovely, of course. Brilliant feeling, why not? Because it feels like you got one up on the other person. But two things for that. One is if you're critiquing somebody who can't do it better than you at the moment, that isn't necessarily helpful because they might still know what they're talking about because they've looked a lot and are just unable, perhaps somebody who is disabled or handicapped who knows a lot about an athletic pursuit. So that's not so useful. And in terms of hypocrisy, just trying to point it out and tell somebody, well, you're not doing what you're telling other people to do. It's like, sure, but it's unlikely you're going to be able to convince them to change their ways. And at that point, I do understand it is similar to the argument that having a public debate with somebody isn't actually to change the opposition's mind, it is to try and sway the opinion of the people who you are talking in front of. And with that in mind, you then have to go into this, whose mind are you trying to change? Your best bet, if you're doing something like this, is to try and go for the long haul, which is to say, you're not trying to change the elite polluters' actions in the immediate, as they say. Instead, you're trying to point it out for people who would otherwise support them and get them to be turncoats and turn away from them or even against them in order to then try and change their actions. Because anybody who pretends to care about the pollution and oppression and all that, because they seem to go hand in hand, a weird thing about political tribalism that you wouldn't think it necessarily does, but nonetheless it does. So one of the hot button topics at the moment would of course be Prince Harry and Meghan, yes, the Prince of Soy himself, speaking about things like climate change, and you think, well, how about yourself, mate? I think you contribute a lot more than I do. So, what's up with that? And if you're also trying to tie it into equity, which is a fancy way of saying communism, which is a more realistic way of saying socialism, then that doesn't quite work because we should all be equal in terms of outcome, not in terms of opportunity, in which case it doesn't matter that your mother left you 10 million quid. Because that shouldn't be yours anyway. So it's using their own standard against them. But, of course, the point is, for anybody that follows such outspoken people, it is trying to say, well, the person that you seem to be believing in as your messiah, or the person that you're following as a role model, isn't a very good role model themselves. So, well, that's lovely that you're pointing out one particular shortcoming that they have, and that certainly helps to destroy their reputation and to remove support from them. But that is only going to remove support if they are an actual principled, die-hard environmentalist in terms of this, which, let's be honest, most of them aren't. For most of them, it just comes down to virtue signaling and saying, yeah, well, they're saying the right message, in which case we should say the right message, and therefore we can feel good because even though we're not doing it ourselves, we're spreading awareness, and that is even more important. Which obviously it isn't. So, if you actually wish to change somebody's mind, which doesn't have to be for altruistic purposes, it can actually just be so that they leave you the fuck alone, you can put it more down to finding something that they do care about, which seems to be developing countries, for example, or perhaps preventing slavery. And depending on which one you wish to go on, then you can say, well, if you care about developing countries, then of course, how did any of us, as a developed country, get to our current state? Well, of course, that was through fossil fuels and making mistakes, if you wish to put it that way, learning, growing, and developing, hence a developed country. And that can only really happen by making those mistakes in the first place. So, if you wish for developing or third world countries, whatever phrase you wish to use, if you wish for them to become a global player and be on the world stage, then you have to allow them to make their mistakes as well. Places like India and Africa spring to mind. And of course, India are complaining about this as well, as you would expect. And therefore, you have to actually enable them to do that, given that the lovely little case study often cited is a mother in Africa trying to feed her children by heating up a tin of baked beans with an open fire under an ironing board, used as a makeshift grill, in order to try and create some hot food and put some more calories into it. But of course, open fire, well, oh dear, incomplete combustion, that's awful for the environment, we can't be having that. Well, is that really the effect that these environmentalists wish to have? No, it's not, because they're all for helping the little guy, in which case they're going to be against that. Or, if they don't care so much about that, it's going to be, well, are you against slavery and the like, in which case you go into China and, well, do they care about their pollution? No. And then they'll come back and say, oh yes, but they have promised to decrease their pollution. So, oh yeah. So you remember how we said developing countries tend to decrease air pollution because they find a more efficient way of doing things? Well, that's how China's goals are set, because they simply use their predictions of how they're going to develop and put that as their so-called climate goals, because they're expected to hit that anyway because they're becoming more efficient. And how are they doing that? Well, by having complete disregard for their citizens. And if you care about Muslims as well, then of course go into the Uyghur treatment as well. So that is much closer to how you would actually get to change somebody's mind, if that was your intention. That, by all means, going through articles like this is a lovely little bolstering for an echo chamber, but that's only making us more distant from each other. It's making conversations far more difficult, and it isn't actually enacting any reasonable change. It is just further entrenching ideological differences, and isn't getting anybody to their ideal outcome. It is the short-term little beneficial gain instead of the understanding that the longer-term process takes a lot more time. And it is the understanding of that process which is quite often lacking, and so by putting time and effort into that, you can then adapt these universal principles to whatever it is that you're going into in topic. So as always, find the problem, cool, tailor it to a way that they care about it, which in sales we say understand their needs, and then you tailor your product, whatever it is that you're pushing, in a way that fulfills their needs and shows that you understand their desires. And this is at that point they actually change minds, or at the very least start to change minds. And that can be, as I said at the start, even such a simple change of mind as, just leave me alone. So the topic reports on the report, as I say, from the UK-based Cambridge Sustainability Commission, compiled by 31 experts tasked with finding ways to best tackle emissions. And they just said, yeah, these top elite polluters, they're not really doing very well for the cause, are they? The panel recommend deterring people from frequent flying and driving SUVs. Yes, and they even say that in terms of electric vehicles as well, because they say, well, where's the electricity being generated? And I'm thinking, finally, it's actually been addressed. Brilliant! And they also said the wealthy should be encouraged to better insulate their homes. Like, if you can afford to heat it, then you can afford to insulate it and use solar panels. And this is actually a good way of encouraging the change that you wish to make. Almost all of us want a more efficient process in anything that we're doing. I mean, that's why drugs are so popular. It's a quicker, more reliable and efficient way to get to a relaxed state or hyped up state or whatever it is that you're trying to go for, instead of meditating or exercising. So yeah, it's far more efficient. That's why it's so popular. And in terms of the richer people, that they seem to have a better business acumen, or at least understanding of money, in which case, yeah, insulating homes, that's going to be far more appealing. And it similarly said with electric cars, for example, that use the fact that you got a lot more torque and your acceleration is a lot quicker than using one of the old gas guzzlers, as you say, and it's going to be appealing to far more people. Why do you think Elon Musk has done so well compared to whoever else you wish to mention, the plurality of car manufacturers who also develop electric cars? Like, go with a Tesla Model S compared to a Nissan Leaf, and you can see that there's clearly a huge difference in marketing and what it is that they're going for. Like, how many people are you really going to change to say, oh yeah, an electric car is a good idea, by offering a Nissan Leaf? You're not. You're basically just saying, oh, instead of cycling, have a car, but don't feel so bad, it's a Nissan Leaf. It's not really trying to sway the people that you're going for, and it's going to be a minority of the target car market, as in your target audience already. So again, it comes down to marketing, understanding the needs, and giving something that fulfills that and coincides with their desires. It's a simple sales process that works with persuasion in any and every aspect of life. So yeah, efficiency. They would actually care about that. And as I say, you can do that for anything. If somebody then cares about their cars, like, wouldn't you rather a more efficient way to get to your destination quicker? In which case, an electric car is for you because of the quicker acceleration, regenerative braking, which means that it's going to cost you a lot less in terms of recharging instead of refueling. Of course, then if you're marketing, you ignore the fact that it takes an overnight charge instead of 5 minutes at a fuel station, but you would just market that a different way to say that, yeah, how long is your commute? Do you really need a big range? No, you don't, in which case you can charge it overnight, not a problem. Then when they ask, well, how is the national grid going to supply this energy? You just say, oh, it definitely will in the future because everybody's going this way, in which case you don't want to be caught behind, do you? And that kind of thing. Anywho, this isn't a sales video. This is political analysis. So, they are indeed saying that they deter people from frequent flying and driving SUVs, as well as convincing wealthy to better insulate their homes. The reporters urged the UK government to reinstate air passenger duty on UK return flights and the recently air-scrapped Green Homes grant scheme. And better yet, they also say that something like the carbon tax or carbon offsetting in terms of plant trees is yet to be proven to be effective. So they're like, yeah, there was an idea. Oh, here we go. So they say, rich people who fly a lot may think they can offset their emissions by tree planting schemes or projects to capture carbon from the air, Professor Newell told the BBC, But these schemes are highly contentious and they're not proven over time. Yeah, so what you do will never be good enough for these people. And that's where they're failing in terms of trying to persuade people. That's like, yeah. So you listen to what we've said, yeah, you can tell us what we said, yeah, you understand what we've said, yeah, brilliant, cool. And you're actually taking steps now in order to implement what we've said, because we've made you feel guilty and you feel like you're doing the right thing. Yep, perfect. You're definitely doing what we said, yep, good. So, it's not good enough. Yeah, we've changed our mind, and no, it's not proven over time. You're going to have to do something else instead. You're going to have to do more. It's like, I'm not really happy that the goalposts keep changing. Well, get used to it, bitch. And that seems to be it. Just to wrap up, let's go over the Paris Climate Accord, or the Paris Agreement, a global accord to limit temperature rises through carbon emission reduction targets. And as with any of these things, carbon emission reduction is far too small of a scope. If you're looking at global pollution, carbon itself is, of course, fantastic in terms of life, and plants love it. Why do you think they did so much better when carbon dioxide levels were so much higher? So yes, the planet can definitely survive. There just seems to be concern over whether or not humans can survive. But if one of the ideas to combat climate change is to not have children, then why do you care about that in the first place? Anywho, their ideas is to hold the increase in global average temperature to below 2 degrees C above pre-industrial levels, and to pursue efforts to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees C. Yep, but depending on which studies you look at, if we were to cease all production now, that we can, and some compare it to just in the West, or if it's the world over. So let's just go within the West, because that's basically what we can do. So nothing industrial at all, nothing that could possibly create air pollution, nothing that could possibly help lift people out of poverty, nothing like that at all. What reduction are we going to have over the next 100 years? Maybe a reduction of 0.2 degrees C. And that is just if we count out China. And others say that that is even if the whole world stopped. That is the effect of the next 100 years. So, is it worth it compared to the technological advancements that we've been making and how we seem to be solving old problems every day, and then new problems have to arrive in order for us to have something to focus on? Doesn't seem to be so much of a problem if you actually have faith in people and the capitalist process in going where the profit incentives are. So by all means raise awareness in order to have people interested in it, and then yes, people are going to be able to find a solution. Not by stopping people, but actually actively encouraging them to find solutions to the problems you're raising. Sure, academics, as they have now become, are lovely in picking problems, but they seem to be pretty shit at solving them. They're just like, oh, this is a problem, and if you keep doing what you're doing, it's going to get worse, therefore you have to stop. And they don't seem to think, oh, there might be a better way that we can't think of, because obviously they know everything. But that's it for me. So let me know what you guys think down below. Do you think that the environmental left are going to eat their own because of this hypocrisy? Or do you think it's not really enough to just point out hypocrisy because they don't care and it is just a game that they play? In which case you have to do a lot more in terms of understanding what it is that these climate change alarmists are going after, and then of course understand the topic as well as you guys do. You'll be able to know what it is that these climate change alarmists are actually looking for in particular, not, oh, the world's going to end in 12 years if we don't do something now. It's like, okay, what does it mean for the world to end? It's like, oh, no more people. It's like, right. Like, are you thinking of having children? It's like, no. Do you like people? No, I think that would cancel on Earth. So, okay. So is it a bad thing if people die out in 12 years, for example? It's like, no, it's just the rest of the planet. Well, will the planet actually end, given what has happened over the billions of years of Earth history? No. There we go. So is it really a concern? No. But that might not be their real concern, it's just what they're saying instead. So you've just got to ask those questions and delve deep in order to understand somebody, and only through understanding somebody can you actually try and change their mind through your understanding of the topic which is superior to theirs. And in terms of reducing carbon emissions, if we were to pretend that that was the one important thing, is it even worth trying to decrease them, considering developing countries aren't going to be able to develop and they're just going to be stuck on handouts from the rest of us? So it's basically universal basic income, or global basic income, if you will. China isn't going to give a shit because they want to be the world superpower, as in the one world superpower, and also that humans have a way of fixing problems. Let me know what you guys think down below. Always intrigued to hear what you have to say. And of course, as always, until next time, have a good one.